Hey, how's everyone doing out there? It is Wednesday, January 9th, 2019, and today I want to talk about a few things that may make people uncomfortable. But before we get into that, I'd like to draw some attention to a tragedy that happened here last night in Lac du Flambeau. My cousin Danielle Tomes lost her home. Her entire house burned down in a house fire. Apparently, a water heater malfunctioned and she lost her entire home to a fire. And so my daughter, Danae Magijic, will be doing a fundraiser in the next day or two. She'll begin a fundraising campaign to help replace Danielle's household that was completely lost last night. So our thoughts and our prayers go out to Danielle and her family. So today I want to talk about cultural appropriation and what I call economic displacement. So as we know that in disadvantaged and poverty-stricken communities, opportunities to earn a living and to really carve a career for oneself are very limited. And what's happening in Indian country and in other disadvantaged communities is that the very limited opportunities that are there are being taken by outsiders, whether that be a non-Indian or maybe a non-black person, comes into that community and kind of swoops in and takes up the opportunities that are there. Now, this really affects, in particular, Native communities, because if you look at other ethnicities and how they keep their economies and their systems going, you'll see that, for example, Chinese people or Japanese people, Asians, Jewish people, Arabs, Muslims, whether they're Pakistani people or Eastern Indian people, if you look at how they run their communities and their economies, whether their families get along or not is irrelevant. They keep their money within their communities. So they hire their people, they promote their products and their people's products, and then they buy locally within those communities. And that's how they have prospered in the United States. And many people don't understand that. They think that they just come here and get all kinds of subsidies and then live off of those subsidies. Now, they may receive some sort of benefits to start a business or take advantage of programs that are existing out there that help them start up businesses. But in the larger scope of things, they really focus on keeping the money within their communities. They hire their people, they advocate for one another, and they really empower one another. And that's regardless if they get along, if they like each other. There's many internal feuds in those communities, but they keep those feuds private and they really focus on the betterment of everyone's well-being within that community. And I think Native people need to start looking at those models because we have a lot of opportunities to do that, but instead of promoting our own, we often will hire or bring in outsiders into our communities and then pay those people big salaries. Now, for instance, in Lac du Flambeau, where I'm at, if a non-Indian can come into our community with a high school diploma and no college education and make $100,000 a year, so can an Indian, so can a Native person. We just have to figure out how to do it. And I'm not bashing anybody, whether that be the tribal government, people that do the hiring, people that do the selecting of potential or prospective employees or vendors. I'm just saying that there's something wrong in our communities if a non-Indian, a white person, can come in here without a college education and make $100,000 a year. I know that we can find natives right here that can do that same work for that type of money. Now, I need to do a disclaimer and tell everybody that I'm not bashing white people. I'm not bashing anybody. We need non-native allies if we're going to succeed in the 21st century as Native people. But there's a difference between being an ally and a partner and collaborating on things, or coming in and actually boxing out people and taking those few limited opportunities away from Indian people to raise their own families, to provide for their own families. I think that one of the reasons that we have a hard time promoting each other and empowering each other is that there's a lot of historic trauma. And traditionally and historically, Indian people lived as communal groups. We lived in smaller villages where everybody prospered off of the next person's success or failure. So if somebody had a lot of material things, they gave those things away. They shared those things. So if you fast forward into the 21st century, into 2019, Native people have a hard time accepting each other's success, because somewhere inside of us, whether that's on a genetic level or a cellular level, where something in us kicks in and says, well, that person's, they have a new car, or they have a great job, or they make a lot of money, and we start tearing them down. I don't know what causes that, other than my only explanation is historic trauma and the fact that we, like I said, historically lived as communal people. We need to get to a place where we empower one another. Whether we like the next person or not should really be irrelevant. We can not like that next person, but we should be able to empower each other, because if one of us succeeds, it's really a success for all of us. And we need to really look at that and how to prosper and succeed off of one another. Like I said, Native people could really rip a lesson plan or take a lesson from those groups I mentioned before, whether they are Asians or Jews or Pakis. They keep their money local. They keep their money within their own communities. When we hire somebody from Sugar Camp and they come here, they drive here 35, 40 miles every day and put in their 2 or 3 hours and leave with their paycheck, they're not leaving any of that money behind. So that $100,000 then goes from our general fund, the tribe's coffers and the tribe's economy, local economy, and it leaves and it goes to wherever that person lives, whether that's in Sugar Camp, Rhineland, or wherever. And again, I'm going to reiterate that I'm not bashing white people. We certainly need allies. We need employees that do not live here, because we have so many jobs here that really we wouldn't be able to fill all of the jobs, because we need help from surrounding communities. I'm not saying that we should not be partnering with non-Indians. What I'm saying is that we need to empower one another and raise each other up. And so I want people to start thinking about that. How can we do that? How can we get past the jealousy and the envy, and to look at one another as potentially boosting each other up and helping one another succeed? Because when one of us succeeds, we all succeed. So with that, I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any thoughts, go ahead and chime in, and we'll see you out there.